My name is Alex, and I'm an experienced hiker, or so I thought. I've tackled trails all over the world, from the rocky peaks of the Alps to the sun-baked paths of the American Southwest. I've always considered myself a master of the wilderness, a man who could conquer any challenge, who could navigate any terrain. But the Black Forest was something else entirely. It wasn't just a trail, it wasn't just a forest, it was a living entity, a place where the rules of nature seemed to bend, and where the boundaries between reality and nightmare were blurred beyond recognition. I came seeking adventure, a challenge. I found it, but not the kind I expected, and it still haunts my waking hours. I came to the Black Forest seeking adventure, a challenge. I wanted to test my limits, to push myself beyond what I thought was possible, to feel that thrill of overcoming an obstacle, of conquering a difficult path. I was drawn to its reputation, to its dark and mysterious allure, to the stories of ancient secrets and forgotten magic, the whispers of the creatures that lurked within its depths, and perhaps that was my greatest folly. The arrogance that fueled my ambition to conquer this place was the very reason why I became another victim of its shadows. I started on a well-marked trail near Triberg. The small town was a picturesque German village, a haven of quaint charm and traditional hospitality. It was a beautiful contrast to the dark forest that waited outside of its protective walls. The trail was wide and well-maintained, and the sun was shining brightly, casting dappled shadows through the trees. The air was crisp and clean, and the sounds of the forest were soothing and familiar. But as I ventured deeper, the forest seemed to change. The trees grew denser, their branches intertwining to form a dense canopy that blocked out the sunlight. And the path began to twist and turn in unnatural ways, and the familiar gave way to the unsettling. I realized with a growing sense of dread that I was lost, hopelessly lost. The well-marked trail had vanished, replaced by a labyrinth of winding paths that seemed to lead nowhere. The trees were all the same, tall and dark, their bark covered in moss and lichen, and the shadows seemed to move independently, shifting and contorting in ways that defied logic and reason. And I knew that I had made a grave mistake, and it had become immediately clear that my arrogance had taken me somewhere I had no idea how to navigate. Then I started hearing things. Whispers in the wind, rustling in the undergrowth, and a low, guttural growl that seemed to come from the trees themselves. The sounds were subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but they grew louder, more insistent, until they seemed to be coming from everywhere, as if the forest itself was alive, as if it was watching me, as if it was judging me. The feeling of being alone had faded, and was replaced by the feeling of being followed, watched, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, a physical reminder of the dangerous presence that had now become a part of my journey. I felt like I was being watched, hunted. Every shadow seemed to be a pair of eyes, every sound seemed to be the approach of something terrifying, and I wandered for hours, days maybe, I don't know. Time seemed to lose all meaning in that place, the days and nights blending together into a single, unending nightmare, and the familiar concepts of reality started to fade. The rationale gave way to the irrational, and I felt myself slipping into a state of delirium where the boundaries between the real and the imagined were blurred beyond recognition. I saw things I can't explain, shadows that moved on their own, strange symbols carved into trees, and a pair of glowing red eyes staring at me from the darkness. The symbols were unfamiliar, intricate patterns carved deep into the bark of ancient trees, and they seemed to pulse with a strange energy, as if they were more than just carvings, as if they were a gateway to another world. The shadows, they moved independently, shifting and contorting in ways that defied logic and reason, and the red eyes, they were the most terrifying of all, a pair of glowing orbs that seemed to watch me from the depths of the forest, their gaze filled with an ancient, malevolent intent. I finally stumbled out of the forest, half-starved and delirious, my body aching, my mind fractured, my soul forever marked by what I had experienced in its depths. I don't remember how I got out. It's all a blur, a jumbled mess of terrifying images, disorienting sounds, and chilling sensations. I just remember feeling that desperate need to escape, a primal urge to find my way back to the world of the living, a desperate fight for my very sanity. The darkness had almost claimed me, and I had barely managed to escape with my life, and with something else. I found this in my pocket, a small black stone, smooth and cold to the touch. I don't remember picking it up. I don't remember seeing it before it was there, as if it had always been a part of me, a part of my experience, a silent reminder of what I had been through. It seems to pulse with a faint energy, a subtle vibration that sends a shiver down my spine, a feeling of a connection to something unknown, something ancient, and something potentially dangerous. I can't bring myself to throw it away, but I'm terrified of what it might be, what it might mean, and if the darkness that I had managed to escape was now a part of me, I should have known better. The Black Forest, it's not just a name, it's a warning. My biggest mistake was thinking I could conquer it, that I could control it, that I could impose my will on its ancient power. Now, I just want to forget, but I know deep down that a part of me is still lost in there, trapped in the darkness, and I fear the day I will have to return. I fear the day that darkness will once again claim me as its own. My arrogance had turned into fear, and the pride had been replaced by a chilling sense of dread. And now, I was paying the ultimate price. Before the Black Forest, I was Alex, the experienced hiker, the confident adventurer, the man who had conquered countless challenges with skill, determination, and a healthy dose of arrogance. I prided myself on my preparation, my knowledge of the wilderness, my ability to navigate any terrain, and I had always believed that I was in control, that I could bend nature to my will, that I could overcome any obstacle that stood in my way. It was a self-perception that was as much a shield against my own insecurities as it was a reflection of my past successes. I wanted to be strong, to be powerful, to be invulnerable, and that desire, I now know, was the source of my greatest folly. But beneath the surface there was always a contradiction, a subtle unease, a feeling that I was not as strong as I appeared, that there was something missing, that I was constantly trying to prove myself, not just to others, but to myself as well. I had always been drawn to the wilderness, to the untamed places, to the challenges that lay beyond the limits of the familiar, but my reasons for seeking them were not always pure. They were often fueled by a desire for recognition, for admiration, for a validation that I could not seem to find in the modern world. I sought the wilderness as a means to an end, not for the connection itself. The Black Forest, it was more than just a forest. It was a living entity, a place where the ancient stories were not just legends, but a reflection of a hidden reality. It was a place that had witnessed countless generations, a place that had been shaped by the forces of nature and the echoes of a forgotten past. The trees themselves seemed to be imbued with an ancient power, their branches reaching out like gnarled fingers, their roots burrowing deep into the earth, as if they were trying to hold onto the secrets that the forest had kept for so long. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, decaying leaves, and unknown blossoms, and the silence was often broken by the whispers of the wind, the rustling of the undergrowth, and the distant calls of unseen creatures. It was a place that had a life of its own, a world that existed beyond my comprehension. The town of Triberg, with its quaint houses and charming atmosphere, it was a stark contrast to the darkness of the forest that surrounded it. It was a place where tradition still held strong, where the old ways were respected, where the stories of the forest were shared, and where the locals had learned to live alongside the mysteries that lurked within its depths. They were not afraid, they were cautious, and they understood that the forest was not a place to be conquered, but a force to be respected. And that was a lesson that I had failed to learn until it was almost too late. I hadn't interacted with. The locals, much. I had been focused on my own challenge, on my own quest for adventure, and I had dismissed their warnings, their stories, their advice, as nothing more than superstition, as the ramblings of simple folk who had been blinded by the darkness. My arrogance had led me to believe that I knew better, that I was somehow immune to the power of the forest, and that was the ultimate expression of my naivete. I did not realize that it was their stories that held the true wisdom, and not my experience in other, less powerful landscapes. The black stone, the one I found in my pocket, it was a mystery, a source of fear, a constant reminder of the darkness that had touched me in the depths of the forest, a relic that pulsed with a faint, unsettling energy. It was smooth and cold to the touch, its surface reflecting the light in a strange, distorted way, as if it was not just a stone, but a portal, a gateway to something unknown, something that existed beyond the limits of human comprehension. It was a warning, but it was also an allure, and I was constantly torn between my desire to discard it and the undeniable urge to understand its true nature. I knew that my experience in the Black Forest had changed me, that I was no longer the same man who had entered its depths, and that the confident, arrogant hiker had been replaced by a man who was haunted by the memories of the shadows, the whispers, and the pair of glowing red eyes that still lingered in the back of my mind. I had been touched by the darkness, and now I had to make a choice to either be consumed by it or to find a way to embrace my new reality and transform that experience into something that had meaning. My journey had taken an unexpected turn, and I had to make a decision on what to do next. The once clear path had become a confusing mess of dangerous possibilities, and it was up to me to choose the one that would define my destiny. The black stone became an obsession, a constant source of unease and a morbid fascination. I found myself spending hours studying it, running my fingers across its smooth surface, trying to decipher the strange energy that pulsed within it. I tried to ignore it. I tried to bury it in the back of a drawer, but it always seemed to find its way back to me, a tangible link to the darkness that had touched me in the Black Forest, a silent reminder of the power that I had encountered in its depths. It was as if the stone was calling to me, luring me back into the shadows, and it was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore its seductive call. The whispers returned. They grew louder, more insistent. They seemed to follow me wherever I went, and the shadows in my room seemed to writhe and contort, taking on strange and grotesque forms that seemed to mock my attempts to find solace in the modern world. The familiar sounds of my life had been replaced by the chilling echoes of the forest, and my dreams were now filled with the glowing red eyes that watched me from the darkness, and the very essence of my reality was slipping away from me, slowly, agonizingly slowly. I started to research the Black Forest, delving into its history, into its folklore, into the legends that had been passed down through generations. I discovered that it was not just a forest, it was a place of ancient power, a nexus point where the veil between worlds was thin, a place that had always been haunted by strange creatures, ancient spirits, and malevolent forces that sought to consume the souls of the unwary. It had a dark reputation that had followed it since the beginning of time, and I knew that my encounter had been no accident, but a calling, a recognition of my own connection to the darkness. I learned about the Waldgeister, the forest spirits, beings that were said to be both benevolent and malevolent, capable of both guiding lost travelers and luring them to their doom. I learned about the Wild Hunt, a spectral procession of ghostly hunters that roam the forest during the dark moon, seeking souls to claim for their own. And I learned about the Schwarze Frau, the Black Woman, a spectral figure that was said to wander the forest, forever seeking her lost children, and she often lured lost hikers with her mournful weeping. The forest had been a trap from the beginning, and I had walked right into its waiting arms. I started to believe that the glowing red eyes I had seen were not just a hallucination, but a manifestation of something real, something that was watching me, something that was waiting for me to return. I felt a growing sense of dread, a feeling that I was being hunted, that I was being drawn back to the forest, that the darkness was not going to let me go, and the thought of facing that terror once more was almost unbearable. My fear was starting to control me, and I was slowly losing the will to fight back. One night, I was walking home from work when I noticed a figure lurking in the shadows, a tall, shadowy form that seemed to move with an unnatural grace, and as I got closer, I recognized it. It was one of the figures I had seen in the forest, one of the shadows that had moved on its own, a tangible reminder of the dark forces that were now a part of my life. My heart pounded in my chest, my breath came in short, ragged gasps, and I wanted to run, to hide, to escape. But I knew that it was pointless, that the darkness was now a part of me, and that there was no escaping it. The figure stepped out of the shadows, and it began to speak, its voice a low, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate in the very air around me. It told me that I was chosen, that I was connected to the Black Forest, that I was destined to return, and it offered me a choice, to either surrender to the darkness or to embrace its power, and to become something more than I was. And the temptation to give in, to release myself into the darkness, was becoming almost too overwhelming. I realized that my journey had taken an unexpected turn, that I was not just facing a monster, but a reflection of my own inner fears, my own hidden desires, and that the darkness was not just something that existed outside of me, it was also a part of me, a power that had always been there, waiting for its time to be unleashed. I had to decide now if I was going to be consumed by it, or if I was going to find a way to use it, to control it, and perhaps even to conquer it. The choices were becoming increasingly more difficult, and I was running out of time. The battle was no longer with the external, but with my own inner demons, and those, I had learned, were the most difficult to face. The encounter with the shadowy figure, the voice that echoed from the depths of the forest, it was a wake-up call, a chilling reminder that I could not escape the darkness, that I could not outrun my fears, and that the path I had chosen, the path of denial, was not going to lead me anywhere but to my own destruction. I had tried to bury the memories of the Black Forest, to convince myself that it was all just a bad dream, but the black stone, the whispers, the shadows, they were all persistent reminders of the truth, a terrifying reality that had now become a part of my very existence. I could no longer ignore it. I had to confront it, and I had to choose a side. I started to remember stories from my childhood, tales that my grandfather used to tell me about the Black Forest, about the creatures that lived within its depths, about the ancient magic that permeated its very essence. He was a wood carver, a man who had spent his entire life in the forest, and he had always seemed to have a deep connection to its mysteries, to its secrets, and to its ancient power. He wasn't a believer, he wasn't a skeptic. He was someone who had simply seen the truth and had accepted it as a part of life. He used to tell me about the Erlkönig, a malevolent spirit that lured children into the forest with promises of wonder and delight, and he warned me to never stray from the path, to never trust the whispers of the wind, and to never give in to the allure of the unknown. He said that the forest had a mind of its own, that it could sense your fears, your desires, your vulnerabilities, and it was that warning that now haunted me more than any others. It was a subtle piece of advice, a hidden truth that had always been there and that I had failed to heed. He also told me about the Weiße Frau, the White Lady, a benevolent spirit that was said to protect those who were lost in the forest, a guardian of the path, a beacon of hope in the darkness. He said that she could only be seen by those who were pure of heart and who had the courage to face their own fears, and that was the path that I now sought, the path of courage, the path of hope, the path that would, hopefully, lead me out of the darkness and towards the light. the black stone. It became a focus of my research. I scoured ancient texts, I delved into forgotten lore, and I started to realize that it was not just an object, it was a key, a gateway to a power that had been dormant for centuries. The symbols etched onto it were not just carvings, they were a code, a map that charted the ley lines of the Black Forest and the secrets of the ancient magic that flowed beneath its surface. The stone had become a pathway to the truth and also to my potential destruction, and I now had to decide how far I was willing to go. What was I willing to risk to discover its secrets? I started to remember an old wood carving that my grandfather had given me, a small figure of a Weisse Frau that he had said was meant to protect me, a reminder of the power of the light, a symbol of hope in the darkness. I had always dismissed it as a simple trinket, but now I realized that it was something more than that. It was a guide. It was a source of strength. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of places, there was always a chance for redemption, for salvation, for a return to the light. The past was calling, the present was waiting, and the future was now dependent on the choices that I was about to make. The land itself seemed to be reacting to my impending departure. The familiar world around me seemed to twist and distort, the shadows in my room stretching and writhing as if they had a life of their own, the whispers in the wind growing louder, more insistent, and the very air felt heavy with an oppressive energy that seemed to be pulling me back towards the darkness of the Black Forest. The small black stone in my pocket pulsed with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine, and I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that the time had come for me to confront the forces that had been calling to me since that fateful day. I decided to return to the Black Forest, not as an adventurer seeking a challenge, but as a seeker of truth, a pilgrim on a journey to confront the darkness and to discover the secrets that had been hidden from me for so long. I followed the paths I had taken before, the same trails that had led me into the heart of the forest. But this time, I was not lost. I was being drawn, being guided by an unseen force, and I felt a strange sense of purpose, a feeling that I was finally on the right path, even if that path was also full of unimaginable terror. The forest was different now. The trees seemed to tower over me, their branches twisting and contorting into grotesque shapes that seemed to watch my every move. The shadows seemed to dance and flicker, taking on forms that were both terrifying and alluring, and the air was thick with an unnatural stillness, broken only by the whispers of the wind and the distant howls of unseen creatures. It was as if the forest was a living entity, and it was responding to my presence, to my desire to understand its secrets, and to the darkness that had become a part of me. I followed the ley lines, guided by the symbols on the black stone, until I reached a hidden clearing, a place that was not marked on any map, a place that seemed to exist outside of time and space. The clearing was bathed in an eerie, ethereal light, and the trees around it were ancient and gnarled, their branches intertwining to form a natural archway that seemed to lead to another world. It was there, in that hidden clearing, that I felt the full power of the Black Forest, the weight of its ancient history, and the terrifying presence of the darkness that had been calling to me since my first encounter. As I stepped into the clearing, the ground began to tremble, and a figure emerged from the shadows, a tall, spectral being with a face that was both beautiful and terrifying. And as it stepped into the light, I recognized it. It was the Weisse Frau, the White Lady, the benevolent spirit that was said to protect those who were lost in the forest, the guardian of the path, and a beacon of hope in the darkness. But there was something wrong, something that felt unsettling. And I quickly realized that the legends had been wrong, that the protectors were also the destroyers. She smiled, a gentle, alluring smile, and she spoke, her voice like a soothing melody, and she revealed that she was not a guardian, but a jailer, a keeper of the darkness, a being that had been using the legends to lure the unwary into the heart of the forest, and the White Lady, the benevolent spirit, was just another carefully crafted lie to keep the power of the Black Forest intact. The stories had been manipulated, the truth had been hidden, and I had fallen right into her trap. The protector was the enemy, and the light had always been a beacon of darkness, and that realization cut through me like a knife. I had finally found my truth, and now it was time to fight for it. The protector had become the enemy, the truth had been a lie, and the choices that I was now forced to make would define my existence from this point on. The light was not a guide, but a lure, and the path I had been following had been a slow march to my own destruction. My breath hitched in my throat, each inhale a shallow, ragged gasp, as the beautiful, ethereal figure of the White Lady shimmered and distorted before my very eyes, her gentle smile twisting into a cruel sneer, her kind eyes burning with a cold, malevolent light. My fingers trembled so violently that I almost dropped the black stone, the only tangible connection to the reality I had once known. And a wave of nausea washed over me, threatening to overwhelm my senses as the truth finally crashed down upon me with the full force of its devastating weight. The world around me seemed to tilt, the familiar landscape of the clearing contorting into a nightmarish vision of twisted trees and lurking shadows, as the protector had become the destroyer. The guide had become the jailer, and the light had become a beacon of pure darkness. I stumbled back, my legs feeling like lead, my mind reeling with disbelief and a deep sense of betrayal, and I wanted to run, to hide, to escape the terrifying reality that had just been revealed to me. But I knew that there was nowhere to go, that the Black Forest had me trapped in its ancient web, and that I was now facing the ultimate choice, to surrender to the darkness or to fight for a hope that was now almost completely lost. My body was aching, my soul was screaming, and the weight of despair was almost unbearable. The White Lady, her voice still a soothing melody, but now tinged with a chilling hint of malice, stepped towards me, her form shimmering, her eyes burning, with an ancient power that made my skin crawl. And she spoke of her purpose, of her true nature, of the pact she had made with the darkness, a pact that had transformed her into the very monster she had once sworn to fight against. She had once been a protector, but had been corrupted, twisted, and now she was the very embodiment of the darkness that had been calling to me, the master of my fears, and also the master of my destiny, or so she thought. She revealed that she had been watching me from the beginning, that she had known that I was coming, that I was drawn to her power, that I was meant to be a part of her darkness, and that my journey through the Black Forest had been nothing more than a carefully orchestrated performance to test my strength, to break my will, and to make me ready to embrace the power of her ancient magic. She had been playing a game, and I had unknowingly and unwillingly been a player since the beginning. She spoke of the Black Stone, that it was not just a key, but a link, a connection to the heart of the Black Forest, and that by possessing it I had opened myself to her influence, that I had made myself vulnerable to her power, and she intended to use my own darkness to make me her slave, and to solidify her dominance over the forest and all who dared to step into its shadows. Her voice was alluring, her offer was tempting, but deep within my soul I felt a spark of defiance, a flicker of resistance, and a refusal to give in to the darkness that had been trying to consume me. My fingers tightened around the Black Stone, the only tangible connection to the world that I had once known, and I focused my mind. I pushed away the fear, the doubt, the despair, and I embraced the strength that lived within me, a power that had been lying dormant, waiting for the right moment to be awakened. It was not the power of a skilled hiker. It was not the power of an experienced adventurer. It was the power of a human, someone who was about to make the most important choice of their life. I knew that my actions had consequences, that they would affect not just myself, but the entire balance of the Black Forest, and that the path I had chosen had taken an unexpected turn, and I was now facing a battle that I was not sure that I could win, but that I was not about to give up on. I had finally found my truth, and now it was time to fight for it. The fear was replaced by resolve, the doubt by determination, and I was finally ready to embrace the battle, even if the odds were against me, and even if this was to be my final act. The time for running was over, and I was ready to face my destiny, whatever that may be, and whatever the cost. The White Lady's offer, her seductive invitation to surrender to the darkness, to become one with the Black Forest, it was tempting, alluring, a siren's call that promised power, immortality, and an end to the pain and suffering that I had experienced. But deep down, I knew that it was a lie, a carefully constructed illusion designed to trap me in a cycle of darkness. And that true strength was not about surrendering to fear, but about embracing hope, even in the face of the most terrifying adversity. I had come to the Black Forest seeking a challenge, and I had finally found it, not in the form of a physical obstacle, but in the depths of my own soul. And now I had to rise to meet it. I realized that true courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act in spite of it, to move forward even when your heart is pounding in your chest, your body is trembling, and your mind is screaming at you to run. I had always been afraid of the darkness. I had always tried to avoid the unknown, but now I understood that the only way to conquer my fears was to face them, to embrace them, and to transform them into a source of strength, a catalyst for change, and a path to my own salvation. I let go of the arrogance, the hubris, the misplaced confidence that had led me to this point, and I embraced the humility, the vulnerability, the humanness that had been buried beneath the layers of my carefully constructed persona. I was not the master of the wilderness. I was not the conqueror of nature. I was simply a human, a fragile, flawed being, trying to find my place in a world that was both beautiful and terrifying. And that acceptance, I realized, was the beginning of my true liberation. I remembered the wood carving that my grandfather had given me, the small figure of the White Lady, and I looked at it now with new eyes, with a deeper understanding of its true meaning. It was not just a symbol of protection, it was a reminder that even the most benevolent forces could be corrupted, that even the brightest lights could cast the darkest shadows, and that it was always my responsibility to choose the path that I would take, the light that I would follow, and the purpose that I would embrace. I started to see the black stone differently as well, not as a source of fear, not as a gateway to the darkness, but as a connection to the very heart of the Black Forest, a link to the ancient power that flowed beneath its surface. I understood that the power was neither good nor evil. It was simply an energy, and it was up to me to choose how to use it, whether to allow it to consume me or to transform it into a source of strength and a path to restoring the balance that had been disrupted. I reached out with my free hand and touched the Weissefrau carving. I let the wood connect to my skin, and I closed my eyes. I breathed in the scent of the forest, the smell of the earth, the whispers of the wind, and I felt a surge of energy, a feeling that I was connected to something ancient, something powerful, something that lived beyond the limits of my own understanding. It was the power of the Black Forest, the power of nature, the power of the human spirit, and it was my own power now, finally, after so long, ready to be unleashed. My time of running, hiding, and fearing had finally come to an end. I had found my purpose, my truth, and my strength, and now it was time to act, no matter the cost. My journey had transformed me, and I had finally accepted who I was always meant to be. The White Lady, her form shimmering and shifting, her eyes burning with an unnerving intensity, smiled, a cruel, mocking smile that sent a shiver down my spine. She seemed to sense my defiance, my refusal to surrender to the darkness, and her voice, once a soothing melody, now carried a chilling edge, a hint of the ancient power that she possessed, and also a hint of the frustration that she could not. Seemed to bend me to her will. The time for games was over, and the final act was about to begin, and she was finally ready to reveal her full power. The clearing around us began to transform, the trees contorting into grotesque shapes, the shadows growing darker, the very air becoming heavy with an oppressive energy that made it difficult to breathe, and the ground beneath my feet began to tremble as if the earth itself was reacting to the impending battle. The black forest seemed to be closing in, tightening its grip, drawing me deeper into its depths, and I knew that the final conflict was about to unfold, and I had to be ready for it. I focused my mind, I channeled my energy, and I embraced the power of the black stone. And as I did, the small silver figure of the White Lady in my hand seemed to glow with an inner light, as if it was responding to the darkness, as if it was reminding me of the purpose that I now carried, and I felt a surge of strength, of courage, of determination, and also a strange sense of understanding, a feeling that I knew what I had to do. The White Lady, her form now a horrifying amalgamation of human and shadow, reached out with a long skeletal hand, and she revealed her true form, no longer a vision of ethereal beauty, but a twisted, grotesque embodiment of the ancient darkness that had consumed her. Her eyes burned with an infernal fire, her teeth were long and sharp, and her voice was a screech that seemed to pierce the very depths of my soul. She was not a protector, she was not a guide, she was a monster, and she was about to unleash her full power upon me. She spoke of the pact, the ancient agreement that had bound her to the Black Forest, and she revealed that she was not the source of the darkness, that she was just a guardian, a warden, a keeper of the key, and she was still bound to serve the true master of this place, a being that was far more ancient, far more powerful, and far more terrifying than anything I had ever imagined. And it was clear that my battle was not with her, but with something that was far more difficult to face. The ground trembled even harder, the trees seemed to sway and bend as if they were bowing to some unseen power, and from the depths of the earth, a monstrous form began to emerge, a creature of pure darkness, a being that seemed to be woven from shadows and nightmares. And it was then that I realized the truth, that the White Lady had been a test, a challenge that I had to overcome to prepare for this final confrontation. And my entire journey had been carefully constructed, each step designed to lead me to this terrifying moment. And as the being approached, it felt familiar, as if I had known it all of my life. The black stone in my hand pulsed with an intense, chaotic energy, as if it was reacting to the presence of the ancient force, and as I looked at it, the symbols etched onto it shifted and changed, revealing new clues, new warnings, new paths. And it was then that I understood the truth, that the stone was not just a key, it was a mirror, and it was now reflecting the true nature of my enemy. It was showing me the darkness that lived inside of me, the protector, the destroyer, the jailer. They had all been diversions, and the true enemy was about to be revealed, and that enemy, I had now come to see, had always been me. My journey was far from over, and it was about to take a turn that I was not ready for, not in the slightest. The monstrous form that emerged from the depths of the earth was not a creature of nightmares. It was not a demon. It was not even a spirit. It was something far more terrifying, far more ancient, and far more personal. It was the embodiment of my own darkness, the twisted reflection of my own fears, my own insecurities, my own hidden desires. It was the source of my arrogance, the fuel for my thirst for adventure, the root of my need for control. It was me. The true enemy had been within me all along, and I had finally been forced to confront it in all of its terrifying glory. And the White Lady had always been its guardian, its jailer, and now its main conduit. The revelation hit me like a physical blow, the weight of the truth almost crushing me, and my breath hitched in my throat, my body trembling as I realized that the battle I had been fighting was not against the Black Forest. It was not against the Skinwalkers. It was not even against the White Lady, it was against myself. The forest was not a place of darkness, it was a mirror, and it was only reflecting the darkness that I had been carrying within me since the beginning of my journey. The realization was a punch to the gut, and all I had done up to this point suddenly felt hollow, futile, and ultimately completely useless. The White Lady, her voice now a mocking screech, a distorted echo of my own fears, laughed, a cruel, heartless sound that resonated through the clearing, and she revealed that she had not been trying to corrupt me. She had been trying to set me free, to help me embrace my true nature, to become one with the darkness that had always been a part of me. She said that I had the potential to become something truly powerful, something that could control the very essence of the Black Forest, something that could bend reality to my will, and she was offering me a chance to reach that potential, to finally release the power I had been hiding from myself since birth. The monstrous form of my own darkness reached out to me, its shadowy hand glowing with an alluring light, and I felt a powerful pull, a temptation to surrender, to give in to the darkness, to embrace the power that was being offered to me. But deep within my soul, a spark of defiance remained, a refusal to succumb, a desire to choose my own path, to break the cycle of fear, to reject the darkness, and finally, choose the light. I focused my mind, I channeled my energy, I embraced the light, and I remembered the words of my grandfather, his warnings about the dangers of pride, about the importance of humility, about the need to respect the power of the Black Forest. And I realized that I focused my mind, I channeled my energy, I embraced the light, and I remembered the words of my grandfather, his warnings about the dangers of pride, about the importance of humility, about the need to respect the power of the Black Forest. And I realized that I had a choice, to either embrace the darkness, to become another slave to the ancient force that had been tempting me, or to embrace the light, to transform the power of the forest, to use it to heal, to protect, and to restore the balance that had been broken. And that choice, I finally understood, was the only path to my salvation. I raised the black stone, its surface now reflecting not the darkness, but the light, and I began to speak, not in the language of surrender, but in the language of liberation, a melody of hope, a hymn to the power of the human spirit, and the words that came from me were not chosen, not planned, but they were spoken from the very depths of my soul, from a place that was both human and divine. My body felt heavy, my mind felt clear, and my soul felt like it had finally come to peace, ready for whatever came next. I had finally understood myself, and also the power that I had been meant to wield. The black stone pulsed, its light growing, brighter and more intense, and as I spoke, the darkness began to recede. The monstrous form of my own darkness began to dissolve. The Black Forest itself seemed to tremble, and the White Lady, her face now contorted with a mixture of pain and understanding, began to fade away, her voice reduced to a whisper, and she was no more. The true enemy had been defeated, the battle was over, and the cycle of darkness had finally been broken. But the darkness had left its mark, and I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that a part of me would forever be lost in the shadows. I had survived, I had fought, I had conquered, and yet the victory felt hollow, incomplete, and I could not help but wonder if I had truly managed to win, or if a part of me was now forever gone. The clearing was silent, the heavy oppressive energy had dissipated, and the familiar sounds of the forest began to return, the whispers of the wind, the rustling of the leaves, the calls of the birds, and the world around me started to feel normal once more, even though it would never again feel the same. The monstrous form of my own darkness was gone, the White Lady had faded away, and I was left alone, standing in the middle of the clearing, holding the black stone in my hand, my body aching, my mind exhausted, and my soul both shaken and liberated by the journey I had just undertaken. I understood that my journey had not been about conquering the Black Forest. It had not been about fighting the skinwalkers. It had not even been about defeating the White Lady. It had been about confronting my own darkness. It had been about accepting my own flaws. It had been about choosing my own path. And it had been about transforming my fear into strength, my anger into compassion, and my despair into hope. It was a journey that had taken me to the very brink of destruction, but had also allowed me to find my own salvation, and I was now ready to face the future, whatever it may hold. The black stone, its power depleted, its light now a soft, gentle glow, remained with me, a constant reminder of the battles I had fought, the choices I had made, and the transformations that I had experienced. It was no longer a source of fear, but a reminder that even in the deepest darkness, there is always a spark of light, a possibility for hope, a potential for redemption, and it was also a reminder that the monsters we fear the most often reside within our own souls. I left the Black Forest, my steps lighter, my heart filled with a strange sense of peace, and the world around me felt more vibrant, more beautiful, more alive than ever before. I was not the same man who had entered its depths. I had changed, I had evolved, I had finally found my purpose, and I had also understood that the adventure that I sought was not to be found in the external world, but in the internal, in the complex beauty of my own self. I returned to my life, but I was not the same person, and my choices were now being made with a deeper understanding of myself and of the world that existed around me. The fear was no longer in control, and I was finally, after a long and difficult journey, ready to start a new path, a better path, a path of freedom, a path of choice, and also a path of self-discovery. The Black Forest had not conquered me. It had transformed me, and that was a legacy I would carry with me for the rest of my days. Years have passed since that night in the clearing, and I still carry the black stone with me, a reminder of the battle I had fought, the transformation I had undergone, and the darkness that had tried to consume me. Sometimes I can still hear the whispers of the forest, the echoes of my own fears, and the haunting melodies of the White Lady, and I often wonder if I had truly won, or if a part of me is now forever lost in the shadows. And then I realize that perhaps that was the point all along. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it has given you something to think about, made you question the nature of the darkness, both in the world and within yourselves. The true battles are not with what exists around us, but with what exists inside of us. What darkness are you struggling to face? Let me know in the comments. And now, if you're ready for another journey, click here to see my next story. It will leave you questioning everything you know.